All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going deep into a really complex and, frankly, fascinating metaphysical conflict. It all centers around a being named Glaucus and this incredible concept called the dialectic of the abyss.
We're kicking things off with this quote because, really, it gets to the heart of everything we're about to unpack. It sets up this chilling idea. What if reaching the peak of power is actually just building your own perfect prison? Keep that in the back of your mind as we go.
So, here's our game plan. First, we'll meet the main player, this god who says I. Then, we'll see how he was made, how his powers actually work, and explore the cosmic pushback he created. And from there, we'll uncover a truly terrifying consequence of all this, which leads us right to the cursed throne he sits on today.
Okay, so who or what exactly is Glaucus? Well, to get a handle on him, you first have to understand the core of his entire being, this concept of the absolute I. You see, the absolute I isn't just some cool title, it's a declaration. Glaucus is a being who exists simply because he wills it. He's the fundamental yes in a huge cosmic argument, basically a self-creating and self-sustaining entity. And here's where things get really interesting. This isn't just made-up lore. It's pulled straight from German idealist philosophy. A guy named Fichte had this theory that the I, the self, creates its own reality just by declaring I am. Glaucus isn't just a character inspired by this. He's its living, breathing, and kinda terrifying result.
And that right there shows you the massive implication of that idea. To him, the physical world, with rules like gravity and physics, that's just a kindergarten he's already graduated from. He's not just living in reality, he believes his consciousness is the ultimate reality. So, how in the world does something like that even come to exist? Let's get into his origin story and see how all this abstract philosophy became a very real, very powerful being.
Believe it or not, it all started with a regular mortal fisherman. But everything changed when he ate some glowing plants from Atlantis. This triggered what the source material calls a Miracle Man-style atomic rewrite, a process called Komoda. And this wasn't just a power-up. It completely unmade and remade him into something brand new, a crystalline supergod.
And the scale of his new body is just mind-boggling. He's basically a living, conscious computer the size of a planet. His body is a crystal lattice that is constantly processing the unbelievable energy of all of Earth's oceans combined. His body isn't in the abyss, his body is the abyss. Okay, so we know who he is and how he was created. Now let's look at how this absolute I actually imposes its will on everything around it. He calls his main power phase shift sorcery. But don't let the word sorcery fool you. It's described as a tactical interface that's literally written into the molecular bonds of water itself. This gives him absolute, total command over H2O in any form it takes. And get this, each state of water is a direct extension of his own ego. Liquid is all about his adaptability, his ability to flow. Ice, that's his power to just stop things, to freeze anything he considers non-self, anything that isn't him. And vapor is how he extends his reach from the deepest ocean trenches all the way up into the sky, making him almost omnipresent.
But he wasn't done. To really cement his power, Glaucus actually cut a deal with the Olympian gods. This covenant of thunder lets his water magic act as a superconductor for Zeus's divine lightning. Just think about that combo, the crushing pressure of the abyss mixed with the raw fury of the heavens. Terrifying.
So you've got a being of absolute will who declares I am with the force of creation itself. But what happens when the universe hears that kind of absolute statement? Well, this is where the dialectic of the abyss really kicks into gear. Remember that philosopher Fichte? Well, another huge part of his thinking is this idea of Anstoß. It basically means a check or an obstacle. The whole point is that an ego can't really know itself unless it runs into something that is not itself. For every yes, there has to be a no. And here's the absolute kicker. When Glaucus screamed his existence into being as the ultimate yes, the universe, almost like a law of physics, had to create an equal and opposite no. This counterforce is the shadow, and it was literally born from the mortal pieces Glaucus threw away. Its entire reason for being is to deny, to dissolve, and to unmake everything Glaucus tries to build. But wait,
it gets even more complicated. This isn't just a simple two-sided fight between a yes and a no. The never-ending war between Glaucus and the Shadow created a side effect, a horrifying, unforeseen consequence.
So all the energy flying around from their constant battles, the source calls it palingenesis energy, which is kind of like the spiritual exhaust from Glaucus's will. It happened to strike a random sinking ship, and out of that pure cosmic accident, a third power was born.
And here he is, the captain from the abyss. Now, he's not a no to counter Glaucus's yes. He's something else entirely. A parasite, a water vampire whose goal isn't to unmake reality, but to drain it dry. He represents this chilling idea of the drought within the deep.
And this just cranks up the horror, doesn't it? The Shadow wants to hit the delete button on the universe, return it all to nothing. The Captain, on the other hand, wants to suck all the life out of it, leaving behind a dried-up, mummified corpse of a cosmos. It's a third, absolutely awful fate for all of existence. So what does it actually mean to live in a world that's caught in the middle of this eternal three-way metaphysical tug-of-war? Let's take a look at the fallout. Well, for his part, Glaucus has become this totally detached architect of reality. He looks at human nations and just sees sandcastles waiting for the tide. He sees our most advanced technology as a simple toy. And he justifies everything he does by saying there's no difference between his will and the laws of nature.
The world now exists in a state the source calls the twofold Atlantis. It's a world built on a fragile, divine order, that's Glaucus's influence, but it is constantly, perpetually being hunted by two nightmares: the absolute nothingness of the Shadow and the total, creeping dehydration of the Captain.
Which brings us right back to where we started, to that idea of absolute power being a trap. By the very act of willing himself into existence, Glaucus automatically created the forces that would oppose him forever. And that leaves us with one final haunting question to think about. If the simple act of saying, I am, creates an equal and opposite force that screams, you are not, then what is the real price we pay just to exist?